Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey guys, Coach Lexi here, and I am here to take a moment to recognize one of our podcast sponsors, Cured Nutrition, and more specifically, I want to talk about their product, Aura. That is A-U-R-A. I have personally been taking Aura for the past several months, and I absolutely love it. Aura is Cured Nutrition's gut health and immunity supplement, and it has ingredients such as turkey tail, chaga, licorice root, ginger, turmeric, vitamin D, and zinc. So it is a really great supplement to just add into your daily regimen for a little bit of a boost in immunity and gut health. So if you are interested in trying this product or any of the other products on Cured Nutrition's website, be sure to use the code, all one word, for a discount. Now, back to the show.
All right, guys, well, this comes out on Monday, so happy Monday.
Feels like a Monday.
It does feel like a Monday to me because I just flew home, so it's like the start of the week, but happy.
It is a Monday for you.
Welcome to the Pro Physique Code. We've got so I've been getting good feedback, guys, on the show reviews, and then we get into the topic. So topic today, Lexi, is?
So we're going to talk about the most pivotal lessons we've learned as both coaches and athletes since we've all competed. We all compete. So I thought that'd be a good one to run through. But beforehand, we are going to recap this weekend because Paul was in a different country and there were many shows that happened. And I think this is just fun to recap things now as the season picks up.
Yeah, it was fun last week when we talked about the clash, because the week before we had kind of thought who was going to be in the mix, and that was what came to pass. I think there was some surprises in both London as well as in Charlotte. So I think that's fun to talk about.
I was actually very surprised with Charlotte as well. Not necessarily like in a good or bad way. But I actually did find, because I don't believe they had a live stream for that show. At least I couldn't find one, but I did find somebody who live streamed the entire pre-judging, and I watched that yesterday on YouTube. And I'm really glad I watched that because it definitely made a lot more sense as to who they like awarded and why they awarded that person.
Send me that link. It's the Pro Bikini.
Yeah, and it showed somebody recorded it, and it showed all their individuals, and it showed the comparisons as well. So I felt that was really helpful. It spoke a lot more volumes than just like the pictures.
Carolina NPC usually does a lot of free live streams. They've live streamed like Junior USAs and stuff before. So I kept going on their page, refreshing, because I had girls there, so I was wanting to see. So that one came down to, I mean, a big jump forward for Brittany Gillespie and Maria Acosta were fighting for it. It didn't look like it was close to me based on the pictures.
Not picture based.
Not picture based. When I watched the live, what really stood out to me was I feel like what kind of won Brittany was she had a lot more pop and fullness to her muscles. I do think Maria looked a little bit more balanced, but I think maybe she was a little flat. At least it looked like it from the video. But I think this show was really cool in the sense of Brittany the weekend before, I think got like 7th or 8th, which is not bad by any means.
That's how good these girls are, man.
Right.
Tweaks.
And then exactly.
I feel like she made some posing tweaks too. I looked at her front pose in both. She definitely squared up a little more.
She changed sides, I think. And she also changed her suit color. She changed her posing side, changed her suit color. But, it was interesting too, because then you had like Kimber Bonilla, who competed the week before at the same show. She got 3rd and then comes to Charlotte Pro, and I think she got 8th. So it's just so fascinating how these placings, just change so drastically on
you've got, obviously they traveled from West Coast to East Coast. You've got, you've got to stay peaked properly. Different judge, you went Tyler this time. You had Tyler versus also contest is Tamer. So you get, this is the sport, and that's why I think we get excited now, and you also had Tamikia Carter, who is coming off the Arnold. I was surprised she wasn't at Clash, jumps into Charlotte. you know, she was in that top 4 too. I don't know if she ended up 3rd or 4th, but I saw her in that mix.
I want to say she was 4th. Yeah, she was 4th. Was it Sharon Ramos? Was that 3rd?
Oh, Sharon Ramos. Wow. So
So
Sharon,
I need to double check. I want to say that
yeah,
was
that's her.
3rd.
She was in that top 4 group. So she actually got 4th at her pro debut when Ari won the Atlantic Coast, and she had won the Arnold Amateur overall right before that. So she's, I mean, that's 2 pro shows, 2 top 4 placings for her. So she's knocking on the door. And she is a lot of muscle. Like that is a physique that is going to have an impact on this sport. She lives in the Dominican, so she probably has to be particular what shows she flies over for. But man, she's good.
And then we also had Stassi, so the girl who won the Arnold Amateur, and then she got 4th at Clash last week, and she was at the Charlotte Pro, and I believe she got
5th, I think.
Yeah, 5th.
Was it 4th or 5th or 6th?
Not 4th, maybe 6th. She was on the end of first callouts. I know that. But yeah, she also was at this show as well. So
yeah, this lineup, like I said, every weekend is going to be interesting. But this lineup, when I saw that first call out, I saw Ashley Hampton in there, very muscular, very like beautiful flow to her physique. You know, I've seen her compete a bunch of times. When you see these girls over and over, you just get curious. I wonder how this lineup would have looked if some of these girls were at Clash, because I felt what was lacking at Clash was a lot of muscle. These girls were muscular
and conditioning.
Yeah, so this lineup looked very, very competitive.
So and Stassi got 6th. I just checked it.
6th, yeah. So that tells you anything. She moved down 2 spots. I don't know how she looked comparatively, but
look, the only time I've seen Brittany is in person was the Clash last year.
I mean,
the first Clash show.
I saw her win the overall at North America.
Wildly impressive then.
She is striking. Like when she is on, oof, like there is just like, you talk about
she
shape.
has, yeah, like her shape is, it doesn't look real.
Yeah,
she's going to be. What's going to be interesting for her is that in that front pose, when she's on, she's got glute striations, and I don't know that that's going to, like, when
I noticed those in the pictures.
Well, I mean, it's like that in person.
Yeah, that's one
thing. If you see in pictures, you know it's in person too.
Yeah, and I think that's why, because I followed her for a while, and I've actually met her outside of a show in person. I met her like over a year ago, and I know I've been following her this past year, and I know that her and her coach have changed her front pose sides many times, and that's, I believe she was actually doing the opposite front pose last week and then went back to her original, which was this past week. But yeah, you can see the glute striations, so I think that there will have to be some troubleshooting done there for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you can troubleshoot that. It just seems to be part of her anatomy, and not to say that it's going to prevent her from, you know, doing well. It's just where your eye goes. And I think with bikini, you kind of worry about where your eye goes. Like if you're front pose, your eye, you shouldn't, it should just be like the whole thing. If your eye's stuck on something, that can be problematic. But it'll be interesting to see, because, you know, if you win a show like Charlotte in front of Tyler, I would assume you go to Pittsburgh and you get next to Amy and Ari and whoever, Brittany is going to be there. You know, that we're going to have some good, it's going to be a good show.
It will. And I, looking at Maria Acosta, who got 2nd, and then Brittany, who got 1st, I feel like Maria, from a balance standpoint, may have won from the front, but I do think Brittany wins from the back. She just had a lot more pop and depth to her and fullness to her glutes. So I think that's, you know, truthfully probably what just won her.
I saw Maria last year a lot, and every time I saw her, there is no flaw in her physique. The only flaw with her is her stature. She's very tiny. She's 5 foot. You know, maybe she's definitely under 100 pounds on stage. So she's going to have to make up for that by just getting a little more 3D in some of her, you know, and it's, you know, there's other girls that are that stature that do very well. But she's been knocking at that Olympia qualification for a while now. So, you know, but you just saw Brittany Gillespie move up, and now you're seeing Maria come out the gate first show. So I would assume next show, you know, she makes that next step. She's a great competitor. So.
She is. And then we had another big show in the UK. So tell us a little bit about that, because that was pretty exciting.
Yeah. So I had no really expectations with the UK. You know, Maz was the head judge. It's a organization that I was, you know, I took Steven with me. Steven is our like European coach. He's had a lot of pro cards over there and had girls place well in pro shows over there. So I brought him with me, and man, he came in super handy. Thank God I brought him, because he knew the ins and outs of that, everything over there. I had no idea what to expect. The competitors on the list, if you looked at the list, there was not one American competitor. So really the only kind of familiarity I had with anybody was if they've competed over here, and I've seen them, and I've seen Tatiana Lavanenko a few times, striking redhead competitor. She actually got third at Tampa Pro last year.
Yeah, that's the girl from Tampa last year, right?
Right behind Ari and Ashlyn, and even Indy was in that group. So she's always in the mix. And then I knew Allison Testu. She hasn't competed in a while. She switched over, talked about wellness, whatever. You know, she was an Olympian, won a bunch of shows. She was on the list there. And then probably the most successful competitor that was on that list was also from France. What was her name? Francesca Stoico. She's won, I mean, I would guess more than 10 pro shows and been to many Olympias. Also Italian. So, you know, going into this, when I got to the UK on Thursday and saw Ottavia and we went to the gym and trained, I was like, whoa, like her physique took a big step forward. It's funny, we only lost maybe half a kilo from the last show, but just the lines, everything was so there. It was one of those things on Thursday. I was like, damn it, I wish the show was today. Right. And then, so we did have a problem. She was peaking perfectly on Friday afternoon. I was like, okay, perfect. We're going to add it. We're going to add more food. I'm going to come see you in 3 hours. I came back and I saw her in 3 hours, and I was like, what did you do? She's like, what do you mean? I go, you are very flat. Something's wrong. Right. And I was trying not to stress her out, but I was like, can you tell me what you've been doing? She's like, I do nothing. I just take a bath. Right. And obviously Italian. So I'm like, okay, you take a bath. Why would, you know, that's a, and then Steven goes, did you put anything in the bath? And she goes, yes. She pulls out a package. She took an Epsom salt bath, and an extremely hot one at that. And so I was like, okay, I know what's happening, right? Still stressed out a little bit, but I said, hey, we're going to go. We went out and I said, we're going to go out and have a big meal, drink some water. I had her go get a filet, and everything was fixed. But so that's why I was grateful Steven was there, because he caught that. Because I was like, wait a minute, what's happening? I didn't know if it was like, she just softened up a bunch, and obviously she pulled a bunch of water out of her body. So Saturday morning I go see her, hits her back pose. I'm like, cool, we're on. Like, but I told Steven from the beginning, I don't know the lighting, the venues, the judging. I was happy with where she was. And even she said to me, Coach, I feel like this is a very good look for America. I don't know if it's going to do well in Europe.
Interesting.
Well, historically in Europe, they go with that super grainy, hard look.
Yeah.
Right. And I've never had this head judge one-on-one. I've never talked to him. Now he does judge the Olympia. He judged the Arnold, both Arnolds. He's, and he knows these competitors pretty intimately as far as like what their looks can vary from show to show. So I was sitting with Steven and with Sebastian, who was good friends with Ottavia, and then even the girl from the Backstage Bikini podcast, Jade, she was sitting right next to me. And so I said, I literally don't know if Ottavia is about to get first or last. Now backstage, I bought the coach's pass and went backstage. The lighting back there was so bad, Evan. I was looking around like everyone looks like they're 12 weeks out. Like girls that I knew historically came in shredded, like Tatiana. I looked over at her and I was like, oh my God. But then I looked at Ottavia and I said the same thing. I was like, okay, well, it's just, so I brought Ottavia out to the sunlight because I was like, I got to see you. But when they walked out under those stage lights, okay, then it was very, very clear. These girls were jacked. When I tell you the girls in Europe are muscular,
whole different ballgame.
Yeah, too much. And that's what I was worried about. I was like, okay, we might not be fitting the criteria for these shows. So when they start doing the groups, she's very comparable to like a Francesca Stoico, but she's way small compared to a girl named Christy Taylor and Lisa Reith, right? So I'm like, which way are they going to go here? So first call outs happen, and Ottavia is in the first call out with Francesca, with Tatiana, with that Lisa Reith. And so I will say this, Ottavia got moved around more than anybody. They moved her out, they moved her in, they moved her over, they moved her in. Like they were just literally moving them. Now the nice thing they did was they had an odd number. So it was 7 girls, and eventually, and I kept looking up there going, man, I just feel like Ottavia is the most complete today. Like there was girls that were leaner, but there was no one that was as balanced and as full as her. and they just kept bink, bink, bink. And then there was a girl named, was it Svetlana, blonde girl, a lot of muscle, kind of a longer torso. And I just kept going, no, Tavia's got her beat, you know, and they just kept, it was funny. It was almost like, like he was reacting to what I was thinking. So I felt like I was in the judge's head. And then they moved. And then at the end, it was Francesca, Tatiana, and Ottavia. Now, Ottavia's never beat Francesca Stoico in her career. I did not know this until after. She also just lost to Tatiana at the Arnold. They moved Tatiana in and moved Ottavia out. So, you know, going into the show, I was like, man, I really, really want like a top 3, right? So at the end of the last move of prejudging, they had Francesca, Tatiana, and Ottavia. They put Ottavia right in dead center, did a couple more turns and a walk, brought him back, and said, okay, prejudging is over. That was it. That was the show. And then, you know, they literally brought them off stage, brought them back out for the, what do they call it, the confirmation round, but it was like 30 seconds later. So they did the exact same moves. Tatiana ended in middle, brought them off stage. Now they did do something nice at this show that I think is, you know, missing from the pro shows here. And you know, I'm not a promoter, but they brought all the girls outside of the top 5 onto the stage. They gave them all these nice big medals, basically like, you know, the show with a medal and like a little engraving on it. Something that's hard as a pro competitor, Evan, you know this. If you don't get top 5, you don't get anything.
Nope.
So I think it's nice that they get these medals, you know, because like as a pro competitor, it's so hard to place. I don't know. That's just a nice touch that I thought that was a nice touch. Then what they did was they had all the girls outside the top 5 go off. They brought the top 5 out. And then in reverse order went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You guys probably saw the video on my reel. Ottavia wins and loses, you know, kind of starts crying. Before the show happened, Ottavia told me, Coach, I'm exhausted. You know, she only started with me right after the Olympia. So like late November, early December. She had prepped all of last year. We did both Arnolds. She was exhausted. I was pushing her really hard. And she's like, Coach, after this show, I have to take a break. Like I'm run down. And I said, perfect. So whether we won this show or not, we were taking a break. Then my concern becomes, okay, are we going to be able to get back on stage in September and get qualified? Yeah, because I've never worked with her in an off season. Now she's been a robot for me so far. Evan, you witnessed it. She's a robot.
Oh yeah.
So I'm assuming the reverse is going to go very well. We also have gone out to eat many times after a show. She doesn't drink alcohol. That really helps. And her go-to like cheat food is like protein. She just orders like chicken and steak and sushi. So, but at the same time, part of me is like, man, if we don't win the show, she might not go to the Olympia this year. So that was a very like cool, like exciting. Yeah. It was just awesome.
That is awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I actually got to meet Maz. I stayed after the show. The promoters were super friendly, helpful. They were asking me if I needed directions to go anywhere, do anything. Maz came and gave me some very good criticism. You know, he wasn't like, oh, she's the best. He was like, listen, this is why she won. And the answer was basically she had the best balance and she had the best fullness and her upper glutes. And I'm like, cool. They were judging to the criteria that is current.
Nice.
He said, I still think she could be a little bit tighter. And I said, I agree. So I know what we're going to do for the fall shows. We're going to come out in the fall, do a show or two before the Olympia. But so now, you know, and you want to laugh? Like, do you guys know where Maz lives? New Jersey.
New Jersey.
He's an American. Like I just assumed because I always see him judging these European shows. He was he lives here. They literally fly him over for all the shows. So
I've met him a few times.
Yeah, I had no idea. When he spoke to me, I was like, oh, you're American. I was expecting at least like a British accent or something. So but he was very, very straightforward. He reminded me a lot of like Bill Sibilia, like very like direct and told me what I needed to hear, no fluff. But yeah, he was very happy with her look. He's judged her for years now. And honestly, you know what Ottavia told me when she found out he was a judge, she was worried. She's like, oh no, I don't do well in front of him. And I think this is why. I think he judges to that criteria that's current. So yeah, obviously great experience.
The overseas shows, for people that don't know, are very different, and the girls look very different. They're very impressive, but it's almost like they are so hard and grainy. It's like figure
Mhm.
almost with glutes. It's
Yeah.
not, that's the best comparison I can draw to it. It's very impressive to see, but it's not necessarily the standard, I feel like. And that's why, like, a lot of them, when they come over to the bigger shows like Olympia, you don't really see a lot of them in the top 10,
Well, and I
because
think
it's just a
that's
different look.
when I spoke to Otavia when she switched to me, that was what, her feedback was like, I don't have a plan for past going to the Olympia. And this will be her third Olympia. She's never historically done well there. So she was like, I want to move up at the Olympia. Um, and I'll be honest, like, she had to trust me because she was not comfortable looking the way she looked. She wanted to be harder. And our feedback after the second Arnold was too hard. So we had to like find that sweet spot for her. So like, it's hard for those competitors, like you said, Evan, that are used to coming in just absolutely. And some of those girls were. And, when I asked Maz, I said, yeah, my worry was coming over here that the girls, and he's like, yeah, but that's what we have to judge. You can only judge what's on
Yep.
the table. You can't tell girls, oh, this is what you should do. You judge that moment. And he's like, sometimes the girl that fits the criteria the best might be hard, but that's what we have in front of us.
Which you have in front of you. And there could be a girl that's not quite as hard, but her balance is off. And so there's a bunch
Right.
of reasons why they
Yeah.
can't go that route with it. And I mean, we've seen it at a bunch of shows, right? Like the Texas show
Yeah.
really jumps up the page last year to the NPC girl that was wildly impressive.
Yeah.
But she was going to be first or last with
Yeah.
that
And she
sort
ended
of
up
thing.
winning her class, but not the overall.
Mhm.
Yeah, that girl. Yeah, she was basically like figure pro shredded.
Yeah.
But her class, there was no one else that was even like as muscular and as like had as good a shape as her.
Yeah.
So
And she fit the other criteria. And
yeah.
like what you said makes a lot of sense, Paul, especially for her, right? And if you're used to being really, really lean and competing and you are not as lean, you don't necessarily feel the most confident with that because
Well,
it's hard to get in your head with that.
even
So
just
good
the
for her.
fact that we're not taking diuretics, um we're not, basically fasting on show day. I'm basically making her eat, right? And so she's getting better with each meal. And I'm backstage, I'm like, nope, you need to eat again, and it's kind of a thing where she left to her own devices. Probably the show started at 4. She might have had one meal that day, right? And she would have just deflated throughout the day. And maybe that's what happened to some of these girls because, if you watch the video, um, the only girl that had glutes as full as her was Francesca, who had fantastic. She looked great, but I think what the feedback was that Otavia just had a little more fullness in her legs. Yeah. So yeah, it was exciting for sure. I got really, really nervous once they moved her to center because then you're like, okay, don't move again. But once she was in first call outs, I kind of relaxed. I was like, cool, we're moving forward. Now it's really cool because now we get the opportunity to take a break for her. And my goal for her is to be in the first call at the Olympia, the top, the top 15 for sure. But she's got the structure and the muscle. Like that's
Yeah.
so much of the battle with pro bikini.
She's got the beauty too. I mean, as much as we want to say it doesn't matter. I mean, you step out on
Very
stage.
striking.
Yeah, very captivating, very
Yeah.
striking. So I think
They
that
do have to work on her. I think her posing needs a lot of work. I think her stage walking, like she takes some funny steps here and there. But yeah, and again, she is for lack of a better term, she's a robot. She literally does what you ask of her. Doesn't complain. She'll say to me like, "Coach, I'm really tired today." I'll be like, "Cool," because if she says she's tired, she's freaking exhausted.
well, hey, I'm sure as a coach too, you probably appreciated her at least telling you before the show, like she was just tired and run down. Because I feel like a lot of people almost feel bad for admitting that, and then they will just beat themselves to the ground, and then it becomes almost a big issue that you can't recover from. So that's good that she at least told you that, and better yet, she qualified.
Oh yeah, and check this out. So they do something over there that they don't do here. How cool is that? They give out like these
I love that. Just like if you were getting a pro card. Oh my gosh, I love that. Why don't they do that here? I feel like that I don't know.
I feel like that's a way bigger deal than a pro card. And
I know.
it was so big. I was like, what are you going to
card.
do with this? She's like, I don't know. I already have a couple. And I was like, I'll take it.
No big deal. I already have a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
funny.
It's interesting you said that about like her trusting you and stuff, Paul, because like I have a fair amount of clients in the UK now, and I was talking to them, and a lot of them are coming more towards like American coaches because especially like over in the UK, from what I've heard, they're a lot of them are really kind of locked into the old school ways of things, and most of them coach a lot of guys, and then they just coach females too, and they coach females very similar to the guys.
That's how
And they
bikini
get,
started in our world.
yep.
That's
Hmm.
where the bikini division started. It was like the girls just worked with the male coaches. And again, it got rewarded for a while, but I'm treating, or we're treating bikini competitors like bodybuilders. We're filling them out going into the shows,
Yeah.
and getting them really conditioned before. We're just not getting them bodybuilding conditioned, right? We're not
No.
getting them striated. Um, so it's a really beautiful look. Like, you know, the I, win or lose, when I saw her come out in groups and do her individual routine, I was like, man, I'm very proud to be like, that was the look that we created. I was very happy with that. The win is obviously icing. But yeah, and I hate to say it because it doesn't really matter, but it's also very like the best you can feel on show day when you're eating. You're not tired, you're not exhausted, you don't have brain fog, you're not going to pass out. And then guess what? After the show is over, you're not starving. I mean, the girl
Nope.
had, I think, 300 carbs and a steak. So I think we ended up at 70 or 80 fat the day before the show. You know, like show day, she was not starving. She wasn't like, it's just
Funny because I feel like a lot of our competitors, and like I can attest to this too, because we don't, we're eating on show day, and a lot of times you're eating a lot to fill out. I always hear people say, oh my gosh, I'm just craving like vegetables post show, and I
yeah.
find myself doing that too, because a lot of times, I'll maybe cut those out or cut them severely back the week of the show just to eliminate any bloat. And I find that like by the end of finals, like I'm tired of rice cakes and chicken and whatever I've been having. I just want vegetables. Like I want a big ass salad. And I feel like a lot of people say that. So yeah, I'm sure she kind of felt similar.
Yeah, so I've gone out with her now a couple times post show, and she just wants lots of sushi and lots of
Yeah.
protein. Like she gets like a side of chicken skewers, a side of like steak skewers, and then that was it. And so like she sent me her update today, and I'm like, yep, I mean, she could do another show this week, and there was no restrictions. She did find some gelato in London and had some of that, but she ate like half of it. I was like, she's got
Yeah.
a very good like balance of like, you know,
She
like
wants to be great.
yeah, but food also isn't
Hmm.
like a tipping point for her. She just wants a taste of the stuff and then she moves on. She's very focused. And I think getting the Olympia qualifications very going to much help her because, we always talk about this, like reverse dieting. It's almost impossible if you don't have a specific goal. Going to
Right.
the
Right.
Olympia is a very specific goal. And she and I have talked even about the strategy this year of getting into those top call outs and what we're going to do right before the Olympia and those kind of things. So that, our goals right now, we're still in prep. We're just in prep for the prep to start, but
Hmm.
it helps. I mean, there's no bigger prize than the Olympia.
The prep
Right.
before the prep.
Yeah.
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 I
Well, I
mean,
think
honestly, like I put her pictures next to Jen Dory's and I'm like, man, she compares very favorably to that look that Jen Dory
She does.
has. So I'll be very curious. She's got the muscle where I don't have to get her peeled to look muscular. That's when you stand next to her, she's just like she's freaking strong. Like Thursday before the show, we're doing shoulder presses and it's kilos in the gym. So I'm like, hold up, dude. She's pressing 35s like it's
like butter. That's funny. That's
yeah,
what you said a
that's a
couple. That's what you said a couple weeks ago too. I remember you said that.
yeah,
That's funny. That's
yeah.
funny.
So yeah, that was it. And so exciting weekend. Good to see what's going on over there. I guess I should touch a little bit on the situation because I was there with Michael DeBoule. So me and Steven saw Michael DeBoule go into the show because we're fans. We're like, oh, that's that. I would go, that's the dude with the crazy glute conditioning. He's got like cross-striated glutes. Didn't say hi to him or anything, but I just saw him around all day. I had purchased the backstage pass, so I was backstage with Otavia multiple times throughout the day, just checking on her. The way it was set up, it was a leisure center, or like what we would call a community center. And on the right side, they had the stage and everything set up. And you go outside and you go in the other door, which would be like basketball courts. They had that all blocked
Mhm.
off for like, the competitors. There was security at both doors. So if you showed your wristband, you got right in. When the show ended, I went backstage. I got a lot of pictures and they said, you can't go backstage this way, go around. So I said, I'll meet you over there. So I went around, went through the doors, helped her pack up all her stuff. And when we walked out, there was cops walking in and they're like, oh, they're looking for someone. I was like, oh, I put my hands up like jokingly, but were not joking. The cops were like very like, and then we walk out and we see a body on the floor with a stretcher, cops all around it, paramedics all around it. Still didn't know who it was. And then someone says like, oh, Michael Dabul got jumped. So at that point, I thought it was like some hoodlums had come in and like got him. Now all the stories are coming up, but that's all I saw. I had zero negative experience there. Like I can't speak for everyone else, but like, you know, everyone was very friendly to me. So you know, obviously there's some legal stuff that's got to go on. I don't know what happened, but yeah, it was very much like, and I didn't stick around. Like I wasn't, you know, I wasn't going to sit there and watch what was happening. I literally just walked out the door. We got in the car and left. Then I was texting some people that were there and saying, hey, what happened? And then that's when people are like, oh, you know, he got beat up by security. They ran away. I was like, okay. So
Yeah. Obviously, you don't know what happened, but it doesn't look good when security literally beats the crap out of someone and then runs away.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, there are CCTVs for that whole place.
Yeah.
England is like, you know, well known for this. They have cameras everywhere. So whatever happened, it's going to come out. Like there's going to be no like denying it or hiding it one way or the other. Whether, you know, they're telling the truth or he's telling the truth, it's going to come out. So it'll just be interesting to see. I don't even want to comment any further because, you know, I don't know Michael and I have a very brief experience with that show. I had a great experience, but that doesn't mean that's always the case. So yeah. Yeah, it's bummed.
Hope
I'm
it all
bummed.
gets
I'll
resolved.
tell you this, walking out, I had the sense that like, oh crap, this is going to overshadow the whole weekend. You know, they're not going to talk about the guy that qualified for the Olympia and Classic Physique. They're not going to talk about Otavia. This is, you know, and maybe rightfully so, but I just had this feeling like, dang, man, that's going to be, I knew there was going to be YouTube videos about it before I even got back to my, you know, apartment.
Yeah.
Pretty big deal.
Wow. Well, what a weekend. What a weekend.
Yeah. So yeah, well, more to come on that. I've got a weekend off, no shows this weekend.
Yeah, and then you're headed to are you headed to Wasatch?
Wasatch.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've got some really good competitors at that one. So that's going to be fun. I'll probably document that one a little more. I didn't do a whole lot of filming in the UK. Just didn't. So yeah.
It's nice to be present every once in a while, you know. I mean, even though filming doesn't take up, it's not like it's a job. I mean, it's always in the back of your head of like, yo, let me film this, right? So it's good.
So I either have two modes when I travel. I either do the vertical videos and I think, okay, I'll make a reel, clip, make a reel, which is what I did. Or I turn it and I do the horizontal videos and I do like, okay, I'm going to turn this into a YouTube. With the Wasatch, I'll probably do more YouTube. Just because I know that show so well. And but I've been to Salt Lake City many times and I think it'll be really fun. But we'll see. I just do whatever I'm feeling.
Love it. Well, I guess we should maybe touch on our topic and segue into it a little bit of just pivotal lessons we've learned as coaches and athletes. Just main lessons we've learned throughout our years. So do you guys want to start us off? Anything you guys can think of, like right off the get-go, like a big lesson you feel like you've learned either as a coach or an athlete?
I mean, there's so many. So
I know. We have to like really dumb it down to the main ones.
I think one of the big ones is trying to do too much in peak week. I think that's a big one, especially if you are already conditioned and ready. Like trying to manipulate, and I've done this to myself, so I can fully admit this is something that I've done. Since I started coaching myself, it's in this last show. I tried to go too hard in a couple directions and didn't even take my own advice with that, and you know, try to pull it out and save it at the end, and kind of pretty much came together, but not totally. And it's because I, you know, fell into the trap that most people fall into with that. I promise you it will never happen again. But
you learn from it, you know?
And I would never do that to one of my clients with it. And that's a big reason I did want to coach myself and do things the way I did, is because I wanted to experiment on myself and try a few things, because I wouldn't want to do that on somebody else's dime, but I do it on mine. That's totally fine with it, because it's a learning experience for me. So yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people do and something I know not to do, but I said, screw it, let's try it anyways. And you know, it doesn't always go the best.
Yeah. That's a good one. I think one thing that comes to my mind right off the get-go is like, as an athlete and as a coach, is I truthfully feel like there's no such thing as taking like too much time away from stage. obviously, you know, take that as you will, but I feel like so many girls, especially bikini competitors, they want to compete all the time, every year. And for some people, like if they have the muscle, they can get by with doing that. But especially for newer athletes, amateur athletes who need to add a lot of size, if you're constantly jumping on stage, you know, year round, year after year, you're not going to be making a ton of muscular gains, and you're not going to be, you know, improving to the amount that you should be improving show to show. So I, you know, although it's hard sometimes mentally, I feel like nothing bad can truthfully come from just embracing a building phase and taking ample time away from stage. It doesn't make you any less of an athlete either. And I know we've touched on this before, like there are many ways you can still stay involved in the industry, in the sport, without just having to step on the stage as an athlete.
All right. Well, I feel like that's two very good topics that we got to dig into a little bit. I'm going to start with Evans, because I think a lot of the problem is that there is a term called peak week.
Mm-hmm.
If you take away that term, I think the expectation changes. So, you know, wherever that mindset is of, oh, peak week, and then, you know, you send a plan to a client for peak week and they're like, oh, wait, well, when do I take my diuretic? When do I do all these things? There's an expectation that you're going to be throwing a bunch of changes. And really, peak week for me is probably the only week that I start to harp on food choice, sleep, recovery. For me, it's just about like getting the athlete ready for stage. And then you're just tweaking things a few percent. It's not this huge swing, because if you go for an 80% improvement, you could miss and you could look 80% worse, right? Even when people are like, oh, I'm doing this rapid backload, fat load, carb load, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, the thing is, like, yeah, you might look amazing for an hour, but if you don't time that hour right, you might miss prejudging altogether and not be ready till tomorrow or finals, and then it's too late. I saw some girls at the Clash at prejudging that I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And then they came out at finals and I'm like, what? And like, they literally just went out to eat and came back to finals, and they probably would have won their class, and they didn't even place in the top 3. So I don't think, I'm hoping that the information that we're putting out, that we're talking about, makes the term peak week a little bit less, you know.
It's like you always use the term. Oh no, you're good. This is really quick. You always use the term, Paul. I think this is great. It's kind of like fine tuning the Ferrari. Like you shouldn't be doing anything drastic. In fact, Evan, you always say this. I mean, if you have to do anything drastic on peak week, like you're probably not ready. You should not, like you should be ready before peak week. Peak week should just be a matter of kind of fine tuning things, keeping stress very low. That's another thing. So yeah. So go ahead, Evan.
I'll be blatant, like what I did with mine, and I screwed it up with it. Is I didn't do anything like crazy drastic or anything. I just brought my fats down too low, and it messed my digestion up. Like that's pretty much what I did. I didn't do anything wild or crazy or nuts with it. It's just something that I had never had an issue in the past with, but I had an issue this time with it, and it's because I'd had them a little bit higher earlier on, and I just had them too low for too long, and it ended up catching up to me. And so, you know, it's something I wanted to try, and it didn't really pan out the best. So it wasn't like drastic, crazy changes or anything like that with myself.
It just messed up your digestion.
Yeah,
so you weren't really, like, the food wasn't processing for you, and you were trying to eat a lot of food, obviously, because you're a big guy and you needed to fill out. But, you know, that's a bummer when you're going to get on stage and you're like, man, I looked better a week ago. Or if I'd have just walked in and on a regular day and done a pump up versus like tried to manipulate things, you know, same, you know, obviously water, sodium, carbs, those are the biggest manipulators. You know, I've also had a client, you know, 2 years ago, would probably have won the whole show. He was a bodybuilder, went out after prejudging, was dominating, went out after prejudging, ate something he hadn't had in a long time, had a food allergy, came back and his stomach was distended a foot. And I'm like, what did you eat? And he's like, oh, I haven't had this in a long time and I ate it. And I'm like, yeah, you have an allergy to this food. Like there's no getting rid of that.
Yeah,
you know, outside of just time.
Personally, why I've always been the person, I know, you know, not everybody has to do this, but I've always been the person that I just try to eat all my own food until the show is over, because I have been somebody who even like Chipotle, I tend to just not respond. Like, I think it's the oil. I don't know what it is, but I always get like an upset stomach after I have it. So I just know, like, until after show day, I am prepping all of my own food, because you also just never know too. I mean, you could go to some place that you've always gone to and have been able to tolerate, but like, who knows, cross-contamination. There's always
You're
that.
trusting the chef that day.
Yep, you sure
They
are.
undercook the chicken. They over, yeah, you're trusting other people. So, for me, peak week is about eliminating variables. So the only variable I want to focus on is filling you out. And usually that just means a little bit of carbs, a little bit of sodium. If on show day, you wake up just slightly flat, perfect. Let's eat. You wake up on show day spilled, and like, we got to get in the gym. We got to do something to pull it back. So, there's lessons that you can learn from when you look your best. I, tell people, like, when do you look your best? They're like 20 minutes into a workout. I'm like, that's perfect. What are you eating on training days? Oh, I'm usually at meal 3. Cool. So we'll try to replicate that on show day. I've got other girls that are like, Coach, I don't want to eat on show day. I'm like, cool. Then we're going to load the crap out of you the day before, and you'll just be still digesting. Yep. And part of, I think, what matters is the psychology of the athlete during peak week, right? So predictability matters. And so when someone's like, oh, Coach, I've responded historically very well to this, I'll try to use that because I know they're going to be like, cool, I'm doing what I know works.
And like stress is a big one too, because I just find like I am notoriously a little bit of a stress case sometimes, which I've gotten better at it over time. But I feel like some people are that way. And, you could be doing everything we're talking about. But if you're stressing yourself out, psyching yourself out, I think that can also cause the body to not look favorably, or could, cause you to bloat, hold on to water. So I think that's another variable you have to consider on peak week is if you are somebody who's notoriously prone to a lot of stress, like what do you need to do to pull that back? Maybe that means, you have somebody traveling with you to your show just to help you with things if that helps to ease your mind. But I think stress is another variable that is oftentimes overlooked on peak week.
Yeah, I always like when my competitors can get to the hotel, get away from their daily routine, whether that's pets, kids, work, and just decompress. Just literally just sit there and, watch The Office and wait till it's time to eat their meal, practice their posing, go to the gym, take a nap. Like, I can tell you how many times I've had a competitor like wake up the day of day before a show and be down like 3 pounds. And I'm like, just
That's
from being gone.
Yes. Didn't you say your client, I think it was Kate, like before the
Kate
class?
Aurora, yeah, at the
dropped, like,
Clash.
3 or 4 pounds. That's so funny.
She dropped 124 to 120 the day before the show. Now I don't think it's not like she lost all that fat, but the inflammation, she slept, she got down to the show early. And those are always exciting things to see as a competitor. I don't care who you are. Especially bikini girls, like when they see a prep low the day before a show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to piggyback off what you said, Lexi, about off seasons too. I have a client I posted yesterday, and if it was probably up to her, she would have continued competing after the show last year, 3 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that. Yep. And we had to have a heart-to-heart being like, if you want to be competitive and you tell me this is your goal, then we need to work towards that goal. And this is not going to get us there. And she's significantly better in like a good 6-month off season, like significantly better. And in my mind, I wanted to even push it off later in the year. But for her, it was like, I don't know if I can stay motivated to be able to keep pushing through this. So I understand the psychology behind it too, in wanting that stage is like that carrot on the end of the stick, especially if you're trying to be like very spot on, then it's helpful to have something like that. Kind of like we were talking about with Octavia, Paul, like having that goal to work towards. And if that goal is, hey, we're going to do a show a year and a half from now, for a lot of people, that's hard.
Too much. Yeah, it can be. Although I think it's surprising how fast that year and a half will go.
Well, it's not really that long.
It is not.
It's really not. Because after you do a reverse and a prep, it's not that long.
Oh, yeah. And in bodybuilding time, I feel like bodybuilding time goes by so quickly. I mean, you say you're going to take a year off, and yeah, that sounds like a long time, but it goes by so quickly. And, and I think one of the things I've learned is that like I get like the other side of things. I get some people, they need a goal. They need to know exactly when they're going to compete in the future, or else they lose that motivation. But I think something that always helps me if I'm, not sure when I'm going to get on stage next is just going to shows and continuing to just do what I can to still be in the industry, be a part of the industry. And I also don't think, you have to be a coach to do that, right? Yes, I'm a coach and going to shows is a good thing to do. But also if you're not a coach, you can still go to shows. You can still, go to seminars, volunteer at shows. Like there's, a lot of other ways you can still feel like you're a part of the sport without, stepping on stage.
Going to shows is probably my favorite recommendation for people because it reminds you why you're doing what you do.
Yes.
It's almost like, you know, if you're playing one of those video games and you get those little boost arrows, you're driving, it boosts you. You can kind of start to get where you're going through the motions. You're going to the gym, you're eating your meals. And what's really going to separate those athletes over time is like, okay, did you get that extra rep? Did you get that fifth meal and get all your protein in for that day? Those little things add up over weeks and months. And when you start prep again, you're going to be grateful you did that. Whereas if someone's just kind of, you know, more in maintenance mode in the off season and they really kick it into gear and prep, they really start training hard and they really start eating perfectly. You know, I've had many competitors like the first couple of weeks of prep, they're like, oh man, I'm really like, I'm gaining muscle. And I'm like, that's not, you should have been doing that the whole off season. So
Yeah.
yeah, the time away from stage, it really helps if you fully understand the strategy around that, like and that's something that I often find surprising when I have a client, you know, a potential client reach out to me and say, hey, I'd like to have a consult. And I'll, you know, one of the things we'll talk about is like, what's your competition history? Oh, well, last February I did this show. And then in July I did this show. And then in October I did this show. And now in March I'm doing this show. And I'm like,
When
what
do
are you
you
doing?
grow?
What are we
Oh,
doing
yeah.
here? Why are
I
you
hear that
doing
all
a
the
show every
time.
4 months? What is your feedback? Oh, well, they said they wanted me bigger for here and then leaner for here. And I go, but you're not taking any time. You're just dieting off the weight you're gaining post show. So that strategy around competing, I kind of miss the days where there was only shows in the spring and the fall, right? It was like 2 seasons. So you would either be someone that competed in the fall and then waited till next fall or vice versa. I mean, now there's people that they're like, oh, I just compete year round. And if you're fortunate enough to be Ashley K, great.
I was gonna say
The
if
rest
you're
of the mortals, yeah, we need to like have a strategy. And I'm sure even early in her career, she wasn't just competing year round. She
yeah.
fits the criteria now. She doesn't have to make these huge changes.
Exactly. And I think that's another key point to just, you know, to say is that, you know, it's easy, especially as an amateur competitor, to maybe look at some pros and think, well, they're competing like all the time. They're not taking a year off. Why do I need to? But you have to realize a lot of times those pros, they already have the muscular density that they need. And their feedback is just very minor things, right? That aren't going to require them necessarily to take a full year off to just build.
No, yeah, and it's shocking how many people in this sport, and especially like on some coaches side of it, and the more athletes, you know, that I work with, and it's interesting to see when I just ask them questions like, well, why'd you compete in this show if this was your goal? It's like, oh, well, my coach said we needed to do this and it would give us time to improve into this one. I'm like, that's 3 months. I don't know how much you're going to improve in 3 months. It's just going to be hard. It's that awkward time. Like you're going to not be able to be conditioned the whole time and get food. It's just a weird time frame for any of that. And it's really surprising. And when you ask athletes, well, what's your goal? And then you work backwards from that goal. And then you get your plan together. But it's really surprising how many don't think like that. It's just, I'm going to go on stage and see how good I can do. If you want to do it for fun, go do that. Totally. Right.
Well, and
And that's why I always ask what someone's goal is.
that's why I love the judges that really give that feedback. You know, I always tell this story, you know, Anne-Marie Lawrence and me, her rookie season, you know, first show, we got first call outs or second call outs. We were always in the top 10, right? Doing well. So we went to Pittsburgh Pro that year, and we go to get feedback from Tyler, and Tyler looks us straight in the face and goes, stop competing, go put on muscle. And I was like, damn, dude, she just got like 8th. We should stop competing. And he's like, listen, she's just needs more. She's got to have more muscle. And I was like angry in the moment. And then now I look back and I go, damn, that was the actual right answer. I just wasn't ready to hear it. And I think sometimes competitors, coaches, they don't want to hear that, you know. Now I love when I get that kind of feedback. Tell me, smack me in the face with it. What do I need to do? Is it something that I can fix in a couple weeks, or is it something I can fix in a year?
And I think another, like, stemming off of that, I'm sure you guys would all agree with this. I think a big lesson as a coach, not necessarily a lesson, but something I've become a lot better at over time is telling somebody, hey, like, no, we're not We're not
Yeah.
ready to prep. If you want to, like, because there's a lot of people that they want to jump into a prep, but they're in absolutely no spot to be able to do so. And having that tough conversation as a coach it's not easy. But I think the right clients realize over time, okay, wow, I'm so happy my coach actually had that conversation with me, because there is a lot of coaches out there that just they tell everybody what they want to hear because they just want the paycheck, right? So, I think that's something over time with coaching that's got a lot easier for me, at least, is just to be able to be honest with people and tell them what maybe they don't want to hear. And maybe that does mean that they go off to another coach and they prep. But, it's not, I don't want to just put somebody in prep because they want to prep, knowing that they're not in a spot to start a prep.
100%, 100%. And that's honestly kind of the evolution as a coach, because and honestly, sometimes you do just want to get people on stage and you buy into what they're telling you. Like, yeah, I really want to get on stage. That's probably also the benefit of going to shows all the time, because you know what to expect, you know what you're going to see. And you can be honest and set proper expectations for someone. Like, hey, no, we're not going to be in the mix. If we do win, it's going to be because nobody showed up, right? Type of thing.
Well, I am floored at how many people that I've started working with that their coaches told them, oh, you'll be competitive. And I look at their pictures and I'm like, why would they ever tell you that? You're not going to be competitive. And here's the good news, guys. If that's you and you just want to go compete and you're not in a place to go compete, there's a million coaches out there that'll still coach you.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. But we want to put
if you
people on
want
stage in a good spot.
You want to call it good news.
Good news.
I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, I have another really it's kind of a smaller thing, but I made a reel about this last week, and I think this is another thing that really surprises me, that a lot of competitors don't know. Or I think a lot of newer competitors, they're unsure of what the criteria is. They kind of look at it as, oh, whoever has the coolest physique is the one that's going to win. And I always like to frame it in the sense of, the coolest physique off stage is not always going to be the physique that's rewarded the best on stage, especially when you're dealing with a division like bikini specifically. I think it's very easy to look at somebody off stage and think, oh my God, look at her shoulders, look at her glutes, look at her quads. But that has absolutely nothing to do with how she's going to place on stage, right? Like, the coolest physique off stage is not always going to be the one that's rewarded the best on stage. It could be, but
even backstage, Lexi, even backstage, you can just you can't tell what. So many times you'll see somebody backstage and you'll be like, that's not something to worry about. They walk out and they twist their hip and they turn their shoulder and you're like, what in the blue hell?
Yep.
Absolutely. I've even had clients tell me, I had a client last season, I remember she was like laughing because she's like, yeah, the girl that won the overall, like, seeing her backstage, I mean, she looked just pretty average, like nothing crazy. And then she goes to win the whole overall. So it's kind of crazy how that works. It's crazy.
I'll tell you this too.
It can be.
Yeah, it's exactly. There was a girl a few years ago. I remember we were staying in line for feedback, and I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but when I remember seeing this girl's physique and being like, oh man, like, this girl's glutes, she ain't got no glutes. Like, it's just, there's nothing there. And then I saw that girl get on stage the next week, and I think she got second or third in the pro show. And when she turned around and hit that front pose, I'm like, where on God's green earth did any of this come from?
That's so funny.
And you don't know until you see it on stage. You really just don't. That's why looking at pictures and seeing people backstage and trying to judge yourself against someone else doesn't do anyone any favors.
Oh, I'm telling you, backstage at this show in the UK, I mean, it was the worst lighting nobody even looked like they worked out. It was like,
so funny.
It was so, like, I was really worried for Otavia, and then I started looking around and I'm like, well, everyone looks. And then they walked out under the stage lights and I was like, I remember the first girl walked out and I was like, oh,
we're good.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
That's funny.
I think one other one that that I've learned with a lot is we all have our ways we like to do things with it. But meeting someone in the middle where they feel comfortable is incredibly important. Incredibly important, especially with females. Like, meeting them in the middle, what they're comfortable with. Because if they're not comfortable with the plan, then it's not gonna work.
Yeah,
they're not gonna buy in.
That's such a great point. And then, especially with females, the psyche is huge too. And their background, right? Like, have some girls that I work with, and they're recovered now, but maybe back in the day they struggled with like an eating disorder, right? So we have to kind of keep that in mind when we move forward, with our protocol. But I think the coach, sorry, I don't know if you hear that in the background. There's like I don't know, a ship that's honking its horn or something. But
We can't hear it.
anyways, okay, good. But I think that the coaching and the client relationship, it's supposed to be a collaboration, right? It shouldn't be a dictatorship. It shouldn't just be the coach my way or the highway. I think, you're so right, Evan. It should be meeting the client where they're at in the moment.
Yeah, and look, we can always give our ideas and say, hey, this is the way I would like to do it, but let's meet you in the middle. Would you feel comfortable doing this? I think that is a big part of this. And obviously, when I say meet in the middle, it's literally meet in the middle and asking, are you comfortable with this? It's not someone coming to me and saying, hey, I'm gonna do the carnivore diet and get on stage. That's not meeting in the middle on anything. But if they want the food a little higher and cardio a little higher, okay, yeah, totally good with that. Or if they're not comfortable doing over this amount of cardio for whatever reason it is, fine, we'll still be able to get there, but we're gonna have to kind of do this with food or other movement, things like that. Trying to figure out a way to make them feel comfortable with the plan. And a lot of them have PTSD from previous relationships and previous experiences.
Oh, God.
And trying to, and honestly, you know, we have to realize that people aren't just going to trust us right off the bat with it. Like that trust has to be gained over time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the resume helps. So that's one thing I've noticed over
Mhm.
the years. I have a lot more girls that are just like, you're in charge, you drive the ship, I do what you tell me. And I'll still ask what, historically, what have you done here? When we're stuck, what have you done? I always respond well when I do this. I go, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's see how it goes. Right. So I try to fit my philosophical framework around their anecdote, and that usually is a really good result. I don't know many competitors that are like, no, I'm not willing to do that. Like
Yeah.
that's why I love coaching competitors. They're basically like science experiments, because
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
yeah, it's almost like you have them in a metabolic ward and you're like, okay, this is your food, this is your cardio, this is your steps, this is your sleep. And you can just turn little dials and get like these crazy results. That like if you just Jen or Pop, you do it and they'd be like, well, yeah, but I also snacked yesterday and then I changed this
Mhm.
food source. Like it, so it's just less attention to detail. And it makes it harder to manipulate little variables that get a big response.
It's
Yeah.
so much fun working with a good athlete that's like a robot, right? Because
Yes.
you know that everything you're going to do is going to make a difference one way or the other, and you're going to be able to see it.
Yeah.
And that is a whole different level of fun when it comes to coaching. Like that's where it gets fun.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
would say my we'll change like to another lesson learned, because this is one that's kind of fitting with what we're doing, is attending shows. Attend shows. If you're thinking about competing, go before you compete. If you're in between shows, go and watch a show. If you're interested in getting a pro card, go to nationals, watch nationals. Like get a visual of what it is you're trying to do before you go. You cannot base it off of pictures and videos on the internet.
Yeah.
Being there in person, it really, really drives home the variety. I think sometimes we only see a highlight reel. Not everybody looks like Lorelei, right? I think like that might be your expectation, and you're backstage at your first show looking around going, oh, the pros that you've heard of, they are the 0.001% alpha competitors. No one looks like that. No one. And if someone does look like that, like Sharon Ramos, like she showed up last year at that class show, we were all backstage going, is she like a wellness pro? Is she a figure pro? Like she walked out in bikini and we were like, oh, show's over. Like, like she looked crazy. And not for nothing, I had a girl there that on all intents and purposes, she should have won the overall. But Sharon Ramos was there. And guess what? She just got third at a pro show, her second pro show. So like if that girl does show up, she ain't going to be at the NPC for long. Right. So going to these shows really helps. I think it can make you enjoy the sport more. It can take away some of your concern. For me, my first time I attended a show, it really just pulled my like expectations way down when I saw like the masters come out and then the novices come out. And I was like, oh, I could do that. I don't have to look like Jay Cutler. Cool. Right. Yeah. And it just, it can really kind of, you know, I'll say this, if your first time going to a show is when you compete, that's less than ideal. It's less than ideal.
Yeah,
Yep.
agreed. Very much
Yep.
so. I think becoming like stemming off of that in general, like just becoming a student of the sport too. I think that's very beneficial, and not only just going to shows. I mean, doing that as much as you can, but just kind of studying up. You know, watching. I know Instagram doesn't show everything, but like if you can find a live stream, watching that and watching recaps too, asking questions, asking your coach, you know, if you have a coach that, which I would hope you have a coach you trust, but asking your coach, hey, you know, why do you think this girl won and this girl didn't? Like, ask questions, be a student of the sport. I think that that really helps as well.
Yep.
Absolutely does. Going to shows is very, very important. Very, very important. I didn't do that for my first one. I watched a ton of YouTube videos on shows, but they were all of like Olympia and stuff like that. So I was very, very surprised. And I was
And that's
honestly, I
what you
was
end up
very,
watching. You're not watching like a natural
yeah.
regional bodybuilding show. You're watching, you know, first call outs at the Olympia.
Right.
And
The only time I say like watching some of those pros, like like watching those live streams can be really helpful is if you want to like practice and you want to like kind of walk through the comparisons with them and like do a mock show. I think that can be really helpful. But yeah, it's hard if you're an amateur. It's like you're comparing like apples to oranges at that point.
and
Well,
also
but
too,
even
like
go ahead. Go ahead, Evan.
there's differences in different shows too, right? So I was watching these shows. I thought it was going to be this big deal. And the first show that I went to, it was me and one other person. And I was
Right.
mad. I was like, I literally prepped this hard for this long for this. Screw this sport. I want nothing to do with this because
Right.
I had expectations that it was going to be different with that. Now, granted, luckily there was a guy backstage who went up coaching me for a long time after that. And no, he did not poach me or anything back there. We just got to be friends. And years later, we worked together. But he told me, he's like, most shows aren't like this, man. He's like, here's a show in a few weeks. I think that would probably, you know, talk to your coach and maybe think about doing that one. I did that one, had a way different experience with it.
Yeah.
So going to shows is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, okay, this is really, you just said something, Evan, that sparked this kind of lesson. I think as a good lesson as a coach and an athlete, I know Paul likes this one, but if you have somebody, a coach who's in your DMs and they already, like, they know you have a coach and they're trying to tell you that they can, you know, get you great results or they can, you know, do something that your current coach can't do, that should be a red flag. And I know we've talked about that before, but yeah, Paul, yeah. And I mean,
Stay
that's
out of
something,
my clients' DMs. I know they look good. You're not going to.
and I've been honestly, and I think the longer I've coached, I've started to hear of some of these instances. And I've even had some of my own clients tell me of people I know being in their DMs. And I'm like, that's not
The
normal.
best part
Like,
is they lie about it. I don't do that.
oh, yeah.
I got
And
receipts, bro. I got receipts.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have never gone through my like trying to find people on Instagram, reaching out to them, trying to like preach my coaching. Like I I don't know. I don't think that that's just a red flag.
No, I'll have conversations with people,
Yeah, yeah.
but nothing outside of a conversation. If they
Oh my
bring up
gosh.
anything to me, I'll say that's a question for your coach.
Oh, that is
And
what
that's it.
yeah, that's what I always say. I have people that will ask me questions all the time. They'll tell me what their coach has them doing. And I typically, you know, I try to refrain from giving my opinion because
Mhm.
I'm sure that there's a rationale behind what their coach is having them do. And so, yeah, that's always my response too, is just talk to your coach. If you trust your coach, you should feel comfortable opening up to them, voicing your, you know, your concerns. So yeah, but it just baffles me how much I've learned that that goes on, unfortunately, or how much of that goes on.
It doesn't surprise me because you know, morals are not, you know, required to be a coach. It's disappointing, but I'm also someone that if you like, you show me who you are, I believe you. And so you guys won't see me associating with certain people. And I'm also not going to go, you know, be loud about it. One of my friends said to me once, vote with your feet. I've always believed in that. If I'm not happy, see ya. Like, you know, I'm not going to talk about it. But I'm not going to stick around for it. And I'm not going to associate with people just because they're, you know, famous or a part of this, you know, sport or no,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have time for any of that. So yeah, I think and as a newer competitor, I think sometimes, you know, it can be like, oh, this coach is showing an interest in me. I don't think athletes realize their true value for a few years. They don't realize how valuable they are. They probably have some type of, imposter syndrome, whereas experienced coaches can go to an NPC show, and I guarantee you, I could tell you everyone that's going to turn pro on that stage, everyone that has pro potential, right? That comes from experience and watching shows. I could also find them on Instagram, DM them, and probably get most of them to work with me. But that is not the process that I believe in. That is not what I want to happen. I want to put out information. I want to do a good job, and I want people to find us the right way. So yeah, it's just there are people out there that are sociopaths that are good at talent recognition, right? And so, yeah, I think if I had one message for the athletes, it was like, I hate to say know your worth, but understand your value would probably be a better way to say it. Like, understand, like, as an athlete, you have a lot of value. What is that? What value is this person going to provide for you, right? Are you just a stepping stone for them, or are they going to make you a better version of yourself? Look at the history of the coaches.
Yeah, and it also always concerns me because, like, you have to kind of think about it. If you're the athlete, well, if this coach is reaching out to you, trying to get you to work with them, they probably do this all the time, right? Therefore, are they really laser focused and paying attention to their current clients, or are they just always focused on the next big thing? You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people out there like that too, that just, they're not focusing on their current roster, but they're just focusing on bringing in, more and more and more and the next big thing. So I think you have to consider that too as a client. Like, do you want that? You may feel like, you're the favorite for a month, but then that's gonna dissipate really quickly.
Yeah, the wandering eye coach. Yeah, I mean, I would find it concerning if I was backstage with my coach and the coach was talking more to other people than to me.
Yeah.
Right. That would be a concern.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, just know your value as a competitor and make sure that that's going to be matched by the person that you want to help guide you, whether it's a coach, opposing coach, a judge, a promoter. Make sure that you are understanding your value to the sport, because ultimately this sport is about the competitors. F the coaches. Like, coaches don't make this sport. We are there to help the athlete get on stage and have a great career. It is not about the coach. Now, some of us coaches actually compete and understand that, right? And we understand both sides of it. So it's about the athlete. If you have a problem, the NPC, the IFBB, they want to help the athlete because that's what drives the sport. That's what it's about. So know your value. Like, you have worth. If something's bothering you, you should be able to bring it up to your coach and get a proper answer. Yeah. So I feel like that may be changing. I don't know. I've just noticed a lot of people this year have been at least reaching out to me saying, like, yeah, this is the problem I'm having. I'm like, okay, it's a common theme with this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
look, it's going to show your stripes too. If you have a coach coming in your DMs and trying to talk to you or take you from that, obviously it speaks volumes about them, right? And look, if you want to switch coaches, that's not a big deal. Like, that can happen. Just be honest and forthcoming with it. That's the biggest thing. Just be honest and forthcoming.
Absolutely.
All right. We probably got time for one more lesson.
Yeah, I was going to say one more good one. Who has one?
Let's see. I have a list here.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of lessons that, because for me, I've probably learned so many lessons, I've forgotten them and relearned them again multiple times.
I'm trying to, like, I have one. I just want to make sure that I want to end on a good one.
Well, I was thinking more about, like, food. I was thinking in the terms of, like, meals and macros and that kind of a thing. The lessons I've learned, I think, because I started off.
I got a simple one for that one. Keep your meals simpler and prep with it.
Yeah.
If you want to have meals that have 9 ingredients you put in there, especially if you're macro tracking, because coaches do stuff different ways. I do stuff different ways. I have some people on meal plans. I have some people on macro plans. Just depends on kind of what they want. But if they want a macro plan, I'm fine with that. But I can tell you there is a massive difference between people that have 9 ingredients per meal for someone that has 2 or 3. It is not the same. And I can tell you, and I show people, I'm like, send me your food logs, and I take a look at them. And I'm like, okay, let me show you an example of another competitor here. Obviously, you are different people, but her food is very simple. Look how much higher her food is, and look how her weight is moving here. Like, we need to change. This is too complicated. There's too many variables in this at this point with it. Don't overcomplicate it. and don't try to make everything fun all the time when it comes to your food.
Yeah, that's basically
Yeah.
where I was going to go with it, because I came into the sport at a time where everyone was on the same meal plan. Literally, I think there was like one coach wrote a meal plan and it was just disseminated to about 20,000 people and everyone was on it.
Copy paste.
Yeah.
And then I came in and it was, I came in under Lane and everyone was doing macros. And so I probably had too much variety and too much freedom at certain points. And I've come back to now, you should be on a meal plan that is macro based. You should be on a meal plan,
Yes.
understand where your macros are. And if you need to adjust something, if you're sick of chicken, you want to adjust it for turkey, great. But it should not be playing macro Tetris every single day, trying to figure out what your foods are going to be, how you're going to fit in a Snickers bar. It should be, there's a reason why prep foods are prep foods. They work, they provide you the best value. And you can still also understand that there can be some flexibility should it be required. But yeah, it's about, like Evan said, simplification, repetition, planning ahead. A meal plan that is macro based is going to be what, for me, is a must for long-term success.
And when I do meal plans, I set the macros I want and then adjust the meal plan to meet those macros. It's not like and a lot of coaches I know just start with a meal plan and they just peel off of that meal plan.
Yeah.
And they don't know the macro base that's behind it. They just start peeling off of it. Like,
Well,
okay, this is where we were. Let's just take food away.
A lot of the inquiries I get are someone's on a meal plan. I go, what are the macros? They don't know.
Yes.
I say, I either have them plug it in or I plug it in and I go, okay, so you're on 11 grams of fat. How long have you been on this? 6 months.
Baffling. Well, it's not even like the macros are usually always completely off, but even like simple things such as fiber or, like their sodium or their potassium can be like way significantly lower than they should be. And those can be variables that, become really detrimental towards the end of prep, specifically for digestion. So yeah, I'm all for the make your own meal plan based off of your macros approach. And no, that doesn't mean fit in all the fun foods that you can, but take the whole foods that you prefer. So maybe you don't like whitefish. Okay, cool. Do chicken or vice versa. You're just getting to kind of customize and eat the food that you can actually tolerate, as opposed to somebody just telling you like, a cut and dry cookie cutter list of things to eat.
And here's the thing also, guys, if you're eating fish and rice, or your coach may suggest, hey, why don't you just do like fish and rice for a meal? That's not abusive. All right. That's literally stuff that digest easy. People get in their heads, and I've had a couple like inquiries with people that I've talked to where they'll say, oh, this coach, I've listened to your podcast, that my coach has an abusive protocol. And I'm like, okay, let's hear it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not abusive. That is far from abusive.
It's like when in doubt, if you have doubts, if you think something is quote unquote abusive, if you you should trust your coach, express that concern. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Then your coach may think, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Let me explain why I'm having you do this. And when you understand the rationale behind it, then you feel a lot more comfortable doing what you're doing. Sometimes it just stems from a lack of communication, and you have to take that accountability as an athlete as well, to ask your coach questions when you have them. Don't just make up these, hypothetical scenarios in your head.
And if your coach can't answer the question, that should be an issue for you too with it. And I have no problem explaining why I do things. If people are like, oh, this food seems a little low. I'm like, well, it may seem low to most people, but you are 5 foot, 103 pounds. So no, it is not low food for someone of your stature with that.
Right.
And I'll compare it against like kind of the foods that I have and foods against other people and how thermodynamics works and where we need to go to get there. And then once they understand that, they're like, oh, okay.
Right.
No, this is good. This makes sense.
So from my perspective as a coach, I'm trying to do two things: get you to your goal the best you can possibly be, avoid eating disorder behaviors, negative food associations. So by saying like, okay, this is the numerical value of the foods that you're eating, that then turns all food into numerical values. It does not turn it into like, it's on my meal plan. Oh, I ate 1 potato chip off my plan, I'm going to eat 4 bags since I'm off plan. No, you just go, oh, I had some potato chips. These are the fat and carbs. I can get right back on and just kind of mix it in. And I've literally, years ago, this was a big problem when I first started coaching. People would just go off the rails and I didn't understand the psychology of this. Now that I understand it more, I don't have this problem. I very rarely see anyone complaining about like they lost their mind and just couldn't stop eating. Right.
Well, yeah. I had a client it was about a week off peak week, and And he checked in a day later and he was supposed to. And I was like, okay, this is probably not going to be good. And he's like,
Right.
I ate way over. I did all this. So the last 2 days I've done no carbs, no fat, just protein. And I looked at it and he was over by like 15 carbs. It wasn't over
Right.
much, but in his mind, he went
Yeah.
over. So he was going to punish himself to bring that down.
Yeah, I
And
see that all or nothing mindset being a big limiting factor for a lot of athletes. And I think as coaches, we try our best sometimes if it is like a psychological issue to work through it. But hey, that's also why like we have Danica for mindset coaching. So that's another thing we have in our toolbox.
Well, and this is why, like I said, the incidences are very few and far between where we have people running
Mhm.
into this. And a lot of
Right.
people come into the competition sport already having not good relationship with food. And even if you tell them what macros are, they still don't grasp it, right? They still treat food like it's an all or nothing thing at times. And I've had the same scenario, Lexi, where someone's like, Coach, I got to apologize. I binge ate. And I'm like, okay, let's just do a recall. And same thing. They ended up eating like 4 Fiber One bars and they had like 2 protein cookies. And like, come to find out, they're actually not that far off. And they were feeling so guilty about it, it probably would have continued. And then, they can learn from it. So yeah, it's
And the thing to learn about that too is a lot of times if you eat off and you eat 4 Fiber One bars and 2 protein cookies and you look not the best the next day and you don't feel good, it's probably because you ate a bunch of fake fiber and your digestion is completely screwed. So
100%.
getting back on plan is better than restricting a bunch of stuff, which is going to throw your digestion off even more. So
Oh, how many times have you had a competitor go out after a show and they look terrible for a day or two, and then by the middle of next week they're like hitting a new low? It's like
Mhm.
you can
Right,
actually benefit from the data.
yeah.
Yeah, you can. And I tell my clients this all the time, by restricting the next day, you're just basically reinforcing that cycle because when you restrict in your brain, you're justifying, okay, well, I'm going to restrict. So what I did yesterday, it's fine. I'm making up for it, right? And then it just kind of continues, unfortunately, for a lot of people to feed that cycle. So, just get back on track the next day and, sit with what you did. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable, but it's going to stop that cycle from potentially becoming more of an ongoing thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I
Cool.
think
Well,
those are some good
Those are
lessons. What do you
good.
think?
I think so too. We've
Good.
been on for a good hot minute, so I think this was a good podcast topic and also some good time to recap the shows this past weekend, which we'll keep doing.
Yeah, and I don't think there is a show this weekend coming up that I'm aware of. I mean, if it is,
I don't think so
not
either.
on my radar. Yeah. So we'll have a nice week off. I'm going to be home. So
And I
we'll
got our
get a good
winner
topic.
picture set up for after New York Pro Bowl.
Yes. Yeah. I just got Ari's update this morning. Yeah. She's looking good. Also, Brittany Hamilton. Brittany Hamilton's going to
Looks
hurt
good.
some people's feelings this year, dude. She looks good.
Yeah.
So,
She's locked
and
in.
Christy and Sandy, dude, Lana's I'm telling you, like, I am so excited about that's not even to mention my NPC girls. So like, yeah, I'm really excited about this season. Amanda Macy just got off stage again, and we're gonna work on some things and come back in a couple, weeks or months. So it's gonna be a fun season. So Pittsburgh, New York, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yes, it is.
And I'm sure Nick's looking pretty okay.
Of course.
Guy's a monster. So
That he is.
all right, guys. Well, I guess that's it for us at the Pro Physique
it.
Code. Make sure you give a comment, like, subscribe, follow, whatever you do.
Bye, guys.
All right.
See ya.